Well, good morning and happy New Year for 2025. I hope everybody had a wonderful Christmas and Santa Claus was good to you and you got to spend time with family and friends and other things that make the holiday season so wonderful for everybody. Um, well, we hit the ground running for 2025. I actually fell asleep about 11:30, 11:40, and I woke up at about 20 after 12, so I missed the whole thing. But we were just sitting here at home. We were watching TV. Um, Oddly, I was streaming the second season of a show called The Squid Game, which is apparently made in Korea, South Korea, and they dub it into English, and you can also have English subtitles at the bottom. But anyway, it's interesting. It was kind of like the Hunger Games type thing. They take these people and they have a lot of debt and they enter these things called the Squid Games, and they start with about 500 people, something like that. And through each stage, if you make it through the game, you get shot, you die. But if you do win, the winner gets like, I don't know, 45 billion won. I'm not sure what that is in US dollars, but it's apparently a lot of money. It's kind of interesting. It's an interesting show. My wife turned me on to it. She saw the first season, so I watched it with her. Now the second season is out. It's pretty cool. It's not bad. It's on Netflix. But anyway, that wasn't what I wanted to talk about today, but we just spent some of our New Year's Day doing that. We didn't even go anywhere, and we didn't go out New Year's Eve. It's like we kind of live out in the sticks. To get to where any of our friends are, it'd be over an hour on the road, and it just wasn't worth it. Not that we were worried about drinking and driving, which is certainly not a good thing to do, but other people can be drinking and driving. So, and plus, law enforcement is out in force looking to pull people over for any little thing. So it was better just to stay home and be the designated drinker, which I don't mind doing that. Um, yeah, a couple things. My wife and I, we fostered a dog. We're fostering a dog right now. We picked her up Christmas Eve. She was came from a very abusive situation. Nobody's really sure about her history. I know a man had abused her because she would tremble in fear, but within 1 week, I've got her eaten out of my hand. She's like my little buddy. She's got happy tail big time. She's kind of got like a pit bull head with like a greyhound body. She was emaciated when we got her, and she's been eating like a linebacker. And they said that if we get her up to 40 pounds, she's going to be spayed, and then she'll be put up for adoption. So that's kind of a nice thing. We're saving a space at the shelter for dogs who are adoptable, and there's a couple of them in foster care that can't be adopted yet because they haven't been fixed or they're getting socialized or whatever. But makes you makes it sad to think people could abuse an innocent puppy like that. She's really a good dog. She's fairly obedient, and she's only about a year old. And she seems to have been in heat. I think she's out of it now, which is good. But she's supposed to get fixed on the 17th, and then she'll be put on the adoptable list. And she was 29 pounds when we got her. We got her up to 35 now, and we need to get her to 40 within 2 weeks, which we can do it. Um, the way she eats, and then she'll be put on the adoptable list. And it's easier to adopt them if they've been trained, and she's crate trained and everything else. But yeah, 2024 was a kind of a crazy year. We had a presidential election. We were living overseas. We moved back. My wife got a different job. Same, still with the federal government, but a different agency. And she's enjoying that. She gets to work from home 1 day a week, and she goes to work the other four. So, and she has something before she didn't have. She's got a commute. She has a 40-minute commute each way, but it's worth it living out here in the country. When I take the dog out for a walk at night, there's been 2 nights so far. There were coyotes right across the street. I heard a noise and I shined my super bright flashlight over there and they ran into the woods. and I couldn't see them, but I could see their eyes reflecting. They were sitting there watching us. And then last night I saw two deer. So I'm assuming the coyote are tracking the deer. But they're pretty good sized coyotes. I mean, normally coyotes I've seen are like 30 pounds. These things look like 45 pounds, but they're too small to be wolves. But they're pretty big coyotes. They may even be a hybrid of a coyote and a wolf. I'm not sure. But you hear them yipping and stuff at night. There's a lot of them out here. The neighbor said that they have bears out here. I've never seen one yet, but there's tons of deer, and I've seen a couple foxes and coyotes and squirrels, and no lions or tigers yet, which is a good thing. But anyway, it sure is different than living stacked and packed in a city in Germany. What I do miss about being living over there in the city is that you can walk everywhere. That's not possible here. Um, to get to Walmart, it's about a 20-minute car drive. To get to Costco, it's half an hour. Um, to get to a major airport, it's about a 2.5 hour drive up to Dulles, or you can drive to Richmond Airport, maybe an hour and a half. And there's an airport in Charlottesville, but I think the only places they seem to fly are Atlanta and Chicago. So that's not far away, but I don't even think they fly at night out of there. You never hear planes overhead at night, but you do hear them during the day going in there. And there's it's about a mile away. There's a railroad track, and you hear the trains come. You can hear the train whistle if you're outside. You really don't hear it inside. I guess maybe if everything was quiet, but you hear it outside sometimes. And I used to live along a set of CSX tracks, and they would come through there, at least 6 or 7 times a day. Out here, I think it's once or twice a day, but oh man, they'd come through there and blow that horn. And when they removed the crossing, they put an overpass in. Then you could hear the train, but not the whistle or the horn. Um, yeah, so we did our move. We came back here, and you had the election, and we built a new house, and now our other house goes on the market the end of February. So we're going to have that to deal with. Um, my stepdaughter graduated from college second week in December. So she's trying to figure out exactly what she's going to do, or if she's going to continue her education. My son and his wife married last summer, and in October, yeah, you could say they had a shotgun wedding, but they were going to get married anyway, but they pushed it up a little bit. But I have a beautiful baby grandson who was born in mid-October, and I'll tell you what, kids are awesome, but grandkids take the cake. And sometimes I wish I could have had the grandson first. He's such a beautiful kid. I saw him on Christmas Day, and it seems like I see him once a week, once every 10 days or something. They're about an hour and 20 minutes away. Um, he just seems to grow. He's got his eyes open. He's smiling now, and he's not even 3 months old yet. And he's wearing 6 to 9 month clothing. He's going to be a big boy. Um, but my son's pretty. I'm not a small guy. I'm not huge or anything, but my son is pretty big kid. Um, and his wife is fairly short. But it was interesting. I got to meet my uh, not my in-laws, but my son's in-laws. My son's wife comes from a family of 6 kids. My son was an only child, but I should say is an only child. He never had any siblings, but his wife has 5 siblings, and one of them is a twin, a fraternal twin. So she has a fraternal twin sister. It was interesting to meet them, and they had their significant others there, and Math, my son Theo, his little cousins were there. It was really cute. It was a fun time, and I had something. I've always liked hamburgers, but my daughter-in-law's father made smash burgers on his grill. Very good. I had heard of a smash burger, but I never had one. I'll tell you what, I had 2 of them that night. It was very, very good. Very interesting. Um, and now, we started off the new year with the terrorist attack in New Orleans. And people are saying, oh, this is why we need stricter immigration and all that. Well, it turns out the guy was a U.S. citizen and an Army veteran. And one of his commanders under whom he served in Afghanistan was singing the guy's praises, saying how great he was. So, no idea when he got radicalized or what happened. Um, the news headlines then said that a Tesla caught fire in Las Vegas, a Cybertruck. Okay, no, but they didn't even tell you it was a bomb and it was rigged with explosives. And the guy who rigged the explosives apparently rented the truck in Colorado and drove it to Las Vegas and blew it up in front of a building owned by Donald Trump. I don't know if he thought he'd be there or something. I don't know, but he blew himself up with it. I don't know if that was intentional or not, but he and the guy in New Orleans apparently rented their vehicles from the same app. I think it was called Turo or something like that. Connection? I don't know. He was supposedly was in the army too. Maybe they served together. I don't know. There's so much speculation that goes on. We don't know. Um, a lot of these things come out later. Um, but it was funny. I believe it was the police chief in New Orleans said, "Oh, it wasn't a terrorist attack," but then it turned out to be one. That's pretty bizarre. Um, now we're in the new year, and it's time to look into 2025. We've got the inauguration coming up on January 20th, but speaking just for myself, I feel like something weird is going to happen between now and then. Uh, a boss move by Donald Trump would have been to go on the news and have a press conference and say, people didn't vote for me. That's okay. I want you to go forth, protest peacefully and patriotically on January 6th. That would really be a boss move on his part because it would show that he has a sense of humor. It would also be a thumb in the eye to the people who claim that January 6th was an insurrection, which it wasn't. Um, I heard they were talking about pardons for the people involved in January 6th. If somebody was involved in arson, assault, vandalism, burglary, trespassing, no, probably not. But what about the people who were nearby on the Capitol grounds and um, the police were ushering them in the building? Do they deserve to be in jail? For the people who did commit a crime, why is there not, why have some of these people not even really had a true trial? Um, isn't it part of your constitutional rights that you're supposed to have um, a speedy trial with a jury of your peers? Some of the people probably haven't been afforded that. Um, the guy had that guy in New Orleans survived, the guy who rented the truck and ran over those people and then shot at police. If he had survived, he would have been arrested and they would have run charge, put him up on charges of murder, terrorism, assault, vehicular manslaughter, whatever the applicable laws were, terrorism, federal, state, city charges. And they would have put him in jail. They would have had a hearing to see if he qualified for bail, which he probably wouldn't. He would be remanded to the local jail or the state prison. And they would have come up with a trial probably 3 to 6 months away. That gives the prosecution the time to develop their case. It gives his defense time to gather evidence and try and exonerate or mitigate him, his sentence, whatever. But they would have time to get the jury together and everything else. So that would be a speedy trial. Now, if somebody commits murder, the judge isn't going to say, okay, your trial is going to be Wednesday of next week. Okay. Would that be a speedy trial? Yes, but it doesn't give proper time. But if I went out and committed a violent crime against somebody here locally, you're going to be arrested. I would be arrested and charged. They're not going to say, okay, we're going to hold your trial 4 years from now. No, it doesn't work like that. 3 to 6 months is probably the upper limit for a severe case like that. Now, if you get a DUI, a traffic ticket, a misdemeanor arrest, they're probably going to make the court case maybe within a month, maybe 6 weeks. Usually in Virginia, if you get a traffic ticket, your court date is usually at least a month away from whenever you get charged with speeding, running a red light, failure to maintain lane, normal traffic cases. Even if you're charged with reckless driving, your court case is usually within 30 days and sometimes um, within 6 weeks, but they don't make it next week or something like that. It just is common sense. You have to have time to develop these things. But for people, they keep using the term insurrection. And in the mind of some people, I could see why they would think that way based on what the media tell them. But not a single individual was charged under 18 USC section 2383, which is the statute dealing with insurrection. Some Democrats will say, well, the 14th Amendment, the third clause says that, this prevents you from being eligible to run for president. Well, but they're ignoring the fifth clause that says that determination shall be made by Congress through law. That's what they did with the insurrection statute. But if somebody's guilty of insurrection, which you're not going to have an insurrection without weapons, there was no way a guy wearing a Viking hat was going to take over the government. It was an embarrassment. It was a national embarrassment what happened, no doubt. But nobody was in danger of like the people getting in there and saying, okay, we're in control of the government now. We're going to do things our way. Nah, doesn't work that way. But nevertheless, I don't want to rehash that too much. I just, if there was, it's just like saying that somebody is guilty of a particular crime. How could you be guilty of something if you were never charged with it or convicted of it? Even if you were charged with it and you were adjudicated as not guilty by a court of law, then technically you are not a rapist, a robber, a felon, a murderer, whatever. Like O.J. Simpson, okay? The late O.J. Simpson. He was acquitted. That was a sham trial and so many people screwed things up. Did he do it? Yeah, we can all feel safe in saying he did it, but he's not a convicted murderer because he was not convicted of it. Um, yes, a civil trial is different, but that's not in criminal court. It's just like people will say that, well, Donald Trump was uh, the word that rhymes with grape. Okay. If he committed that, he was held civilly liable, but they will go on and say he is a blankist because of this. Well, that's not the same thing. I know it's splitting hairs, and the man doesn't necessarily deserve my defense, but people need to be consistent about things. It's just like when people say, oh, well, Joe Biden is guilty of treason. Well, is he really? Has he been charged with it and convicted of it? Did he do things that could be arguably treasonous? Perhaps, but it's not how the system works. Um, the impeachment thing, okay? If the Democrats in 2026 regain the House, they're gonna impeach Trump, and if they control the Senate, they're going to remove him from office. But if you're a Democrat, that means you end up with J.D. Vance as president, and then in 2028 there could be a huge backlash. I think some of what went on with Donald Trump winning, some of that might have had to do with the backlash against the bogus impeachment. They tried to impeach the man after he was no longer in office. And if you read the clause pertaining to impeachment, it applies to the president, vice president, and other civil officers. Well, if you're a former president and you're no longer in office, you're not a civil officer. So you can't impeach somebody who's not in the position to be impeached. I know that doesn't stop some of these people in Congress from doing what they're doing, but it'd be like trying to fire somebody who already quit. When that'd be like I retired in summer of 2022 from my job before we moved to Germany. I retired early. That'd be like somebody from my company saying, "Well, no, we fired him," or they decide to fire me after I retired. It that doesn't it those two things don't go together. It doesn't work like that. Um, but I think that right now within the Republican Party, you've got a big split. You've got even the MAGA movement, the so-called MAGA movement, is split into two camps. Well, the Democrats have a civil war on the left going on in their party. You've got a lot of the old school, you know, this is how we do it, Democrats, and you've got a lot of these young far left radicals in the party. So they're having their own, civil war within their party, and in the Republican Party, on the right, you've got some of the same things. Um, Regarding the H-1B visas, I think there's a lot of misconception about it. Um, I think it's highly abused. Uh, do we want to have um, the best and brightest talent from all over the world coming to the United States? Who could be against that? But on the other hand, do we want companies to be able to import workers at far lower wages who are going to do anything they can just to get here, bring them in under some kind of technical visa, and have them get access to our educational system, our corporate world, and everything like that, where their main objective is just going to be to try and get more people of their own kind. And I'm using air quotes with that. Like if you hire somebody from India, they're going to do everything they can just to hire Indian people under them. I have heard of that. Same thing with Chinese or Armenians or Germans or Dutch or whatever. So it's kind of there's kind of a double edge to it. And if we had this America First thing where we didn't, we don't want anybody coming in here for these high tech jobs, give them to Americans. Well, are there a lot of Americans who are qualified to do those jobs, the STEM jobs? I don't know. I'm not in the workforce. I'm retired, but I have heard of things where they can't get enough Americans to do it. Another thing you run the risk of is losing a competitive edge in a global economy. If you say, well, we're not going to bring in these high tech workers, well, a lot of these high tech companies that are in the United States, what's to stop them from relocating their office to New Delhi or Calcutta or Singapore or Beijing? What's to stop them from deciding that, well, Africa is an up and coming market. The Chinese are investing a lot of money in there. The Chinese are giving loans to nations. Although, unlike the United States, where we just throw money and make it rain, they have stipulations attached that if they don't get paid back what they're owed, then they get land and mineral rights. One thing about the Chinese, they're quite shrewd as how they do things. We're kind of stupid in that regard as Americans. Um, but you could have a situation where the high tech companies say, okay, you won't let us bring in software engineers from India, you won't let us bring in chemists from China, or whatever. So we're going to move our operations there, and then you end up with other Americans who lose their jobs. So this isn't as cut and dry as everybody thinks it is. Um, you know, America first. It sounds great, and who doesn't believe that? Yeah, I'm red, white, and blue all the way. But we do live in a global economy, and we can't just stick our heads in the sands and say, okay, well, we're going to put tariffs on everything imported, and it's going to help our own industry. Well, in the short run, it may look that way, but you remember what happened back in the 60s and 70s when there were high tariffs on imported cars, and everybody had to buy from the big three. Well, what happened to automotive quality? In the 70s, what happened to it? It went in the pits, and some of that was because of government action. But when you have, if you had, let's say you had a McDonald's and a Burger King, and they were competitors with each other, and they were both trying to attract customers and employees from each other, and but they kind of had an understanding they were the only two games in town. Well, what if you had a Roy Rogers and a Wendy's and an Arby's and maybe an In-N-Out burger? It's a West Coast thing, but you had an In-N-Out burger all move into the same town. Well, what's going to happen? You're going to have a lot more competition. That's going to help ensure quality stays up, and it's going to ensure that prices stay lower. Not only is that better for consumers, but now the manager of Wendy's, Roy Rogers, McDonald's, Burger King, and In-N-Out, whatever, pick your burger chain, Hardee's, they all now have to compete for employees too. So it does, competition for the most part does help things. Now, on the other hand, you have Ross Perot from back in the early 90s. Larry, you're going to have a giant sucking sound. He was basically saying that it's hard for Americans to compete against China if an American wage is $16 an hour and a Chinaman is making $6 an hour, just to pull numbers out of my hair. Um, well, the American, you're either going to have to, for them to be competitive, you're going to have to lower the American to say $10 an hour to be equivalent to the Chinese making $6 an hour, although they're probably making less than that. But, you know, what happens when you do that? When you cut American wages down really low, um, in order to make us more competitive, what does that do to the American standard of living? Okay. Um, I'm a big believer in a lot of what Milton Friedman says. But there's always a caveat to some of these things. Um, it's just like people will say Walmart causes small business to lose out. Does it? In some cases, yeah. If you have a small grocery store and a Walmart supercenter moves in nearby, you're going to have a tough time competing with them on price. You might be able to do it on service or carrying some exclusive products, higher end wines or something like that. But you're going to have a tough time competing with Walmart. But on the other hand, look at least here in Virginia, you go to where there's a Walmart, okay? Walmart will sell you a cell phone, they'll sell you a television. Walmart, even some of them even have a place where you can get your hair cut inside. Um, Walmart often will have a restaurant inside, either McDonald's or Subway. And our Walmart, one of the Walmarts near here, has a Domino's pizza inside of it, which is super expensive, but somehow it stays in business. But in the same shopping center where Walmart is, guess what? There will be a Firestone tire place. There's going to be a car wash. There's going to be a hair cuttery. There's going to be a Subway. You might have a Firehouse Subs or a Blimpie or a competing sandwich shop. You're going to have maybe a Panera Bread. Walmart has a bread bakery inside, but you've got a Panera Bread there. You might have a Einstein Brothers Bagels, where Walmart will sell bagels too. Um, you're going to have a place that next to Walmart will sell you appliances, but next door to Walmart over here, there's a Home Depot. Okay. Do they overlap on some things? Yeah, maybe household goods, light bulbs, and stuff. And they're both thriving. Um, there's if you go over there to the shopping center where Walmart is, there's restaurants. There's even I think it's Cricket. There's a cellular phone store over there. Okay, Walmart sells phones, but yet there's a cellular phone right across the parking lot. There's another cellular phone store. So, what do these other places do that better than Walmart? They probably have better customer service. Um, even if their pricing might not be as good, you might have better experience getting somebody to help you. There's even a appliance store. Walmart will sell you an appliance, but they have a an appliance store. If you go to Richmond, there's I think it's Lakeside Appliance. It's right near Walmart. So Walmart is not, they're not the total good guy that some people think they are, but they're not the villain in the game either. Um, It's trying to pin down the United States economy to one thing or the other. Just it isn't going to work. And if you put tariffs on things, that's a tax on us. Um, does it generate money for the government? Yeah, absolutely. But it's another tax. You get people who are like, well, we need to make Trump's tax cuts permanent. We need lower taxes, but we want tariffs. Yay! Make those Chinese pay for it. No, they don't pay for it, nor do the Mexicans. That's a tax paid by us. It also, if you tax raw materials coming from Canada or China or Mexico or whatever, it increases the cost of goods that are produced in the United States, which could make our products less effective on the world market, um, which will put Americans out of a job. So, it's like you might the economy is very complicated. It's a lot more. There's a lot more to it than most people think. Um, Here in Virginia, our minimum wage just went up. I think it's like 12.50 an hour or something. Well, you can go to most any McDonald's and they'll pay you 16 or 17. So the minimum wage is kind of a joke. Even whatever it was, it was far below what the market pays. Um, right now, people are dying for qualified workers. Some companies don't seem to pay that much, but if you have any kind of skill, like a skilled trade, um, I still have my commercial driver's license. Uh, if I wanted to go back on the road, my wife wouldn't put up with that. But if I wanted to go back up on the road, I could probably choose from a number of outfits in town where I would be starting at six figures, over six figures. Now, I'd be gone maybe 2 weeks at a time, but think of what plumbers, electricians, diesel mechanics, welders, these are jobs where you get dirt under your fingernails, and everybody wants their kid to be a doctor or a lawyer or an Indian chief, but there's money to be made out there. Even people in retail are making pretty good money with overtime right now. Now, I understand the whole inflation thing has everything all cattywampus, and trying to buy a house right now, if you're just starting out in the workplace, is a daunting task. Um, we're not going to see prices just fall unless we were in severe deflation, and that would mean we were in a recession or a depression. We really don't want that. Um, the only way we're going to really fight this is to clamp down on spending and taxes and ease up on the money printing, which feeds inflation, and grow the economy organically. And we're going to have to do that. We're going to have to harness our abundant energy reserves. Part of having a growing, strong manufacturing base is cheap, reliable, and abundant natural energy. And we have plenty of it in the United States. We just, the old saying is that our oil is all underground and the dipsticks are in DC. Um, that's been true for quite some time. But if we have an abundant manufacturing sector, we can make things better quality than most places in the world. American workers are extremely productive. Um, Somebody operating a steam shovel is going to be making a lot more money than a guy who can only work a shovel. Um, Even though he may not work as hard as you would think, it's not backbreaking labor, but he's going to make more money because he's more productive. Technological innovation, efficiency, and abundant energy is necessary to have a thriving manufacturing base, as well as responsible and common sense safety and pollution rules. We can't just say, well, let's have smokestacks spewing ash into the atmosphere 24/7. No, but you can't say, well, you can't open that factory unless you use solar and wind power either. That's not going to work. We have to have people making decisions that affect a large number of people, have those people based in common sense and reality, not pie in the sky stuff. Um, but 2025, we going to experience a renaissance in America? I don't know. I can't predict that, but I remain cautiously optimistic. But we have a lot of systemic problems in the country that are not going to go away with, just because somebody won an election. And the people who don't have quote unquote American values, the people who don't believe in the Constitution, the rule of law, um, capitalism, um, individual liberty, economic freedom, the people who tend not to believe in that, the people who tend to believe in statism, authoritarianism, collectivism, um, neo-Marxism, and the omnipotent Mother May I type of government. Um, you know, they're still out there. They still run a lot of state governments. They run a lot of municipalities, and they're going to be fighting any change that might threaten their hegemony. So, when you when you make when you have a mindset that government should be big enough to give you anything you want, well, the flip side of that, it's going to be powerful enough to take everything you have. Um, I shudder when I hear people talk about the federal government should run healthcare. It's like, I understand that our healthcare system is the best in the world. It's the delivery of it and the financing of it. That's what's screwed up. The insurance end. Um, we have a situation where if the federal government were to take over healthcare and it would become a right, which if you have to conscript the labor of other people, it's not really truly a right. But that's another issue for another day. You're going to have like the efficiency of the post office, the customer service of the DMV, the compassion of the IRS, and the fiscal wizardry of the Social Security system all rolled into one. I don't know how anybody thinks that putting the, the people who run public housing in charge of healthcare is going to be any improvement for the vast majority of the people. I know they might believe that, but in practice, you say, well, the insurance company denied me this treatment. Okay. Well, they're not denying you the treatment. They're just denying that they're going to pay for it, which on the micro level, that's the same thing. But you don't think that a government bureaucracy is going to be rationing care based on a formula that they prefer? You don't think that if you're 75 years old and you've paid taxes all of your life since you've been working and you need cancer treatment or you need a knee replacement or you need an organ transplant to maybe give you another 5 years of life versus somebody who's 20 years old who just jumped the border, um, and there's going to be treatment ration, who do you think is going to get it? The 20-year-old, because in the eyes of the statist and the collectivist, they have more years to contribute to the omnipotent state than you do. You're past your prime. You're on your way out. Um, I think people ought to be very careful what they wish for. Um, do we have a lot of inherent problems? Yeah. Can we fix it? Yeah. Is government the solution? No. A lot of times government is the problem. You look at two areas of our economy where federal government involvement is the greatest: education and healthcare. And what's happened to both of them? Costs have gone through the roof, they've gone haywire. What parts of the healthcare system has the price actually gone down? Two areas: cosmetic surgery like boob jobs, tummy tucks, things like that, and LASIK. Those are both procedures that typically are not covered by insurance. So the market forces have forced people to shop around. They don't just show up and give their insurance card and get a procedure done, because if you want to get a boob job or a tummy tuck, you're paying for that out of your own pocket. So you're going to search around for the best deal. You're going to consult with one, two, or three different surgeons to get a price quote on elective surgery, and you're going to pay for it yourself. So when it's your money for you, you're going to be very careful with it. When it's, your money for somebody else, the government isn't going to care. If it's um, the government's money, for somebody else. Most people don't care because they think the government has this massive pool of money. Well, where do they get that from? Taxing, borrowing, or printing. So we all pay that in the long run. It's just something some people need to think about. Other people will say, well, Norway has great socialized healthcare and so does Sweden. Well, they also have populations smaller than some of our cities. They don't have a constitutional prohibition against it, and they don't have an open border or a de facto open border. They don't have millions of people in their country that they're sustaining. They don't do it. They don't send billions of dollars to everybody else around the world either. So it's like you can sort of have an overbearing welfare state like they do, but you keep it for your own people. But we're trying to sustain both in the United States, and it just doesn't work. If they want federal control over healthcare, we need to amend the Constitution because Article 1, Section 8 does not enumerate healthcare as a federal government function, nor does it enumerate education or retirement or housing. But yet, we've got the federal government involved in all those things, and we wonder why we're $36 trillion dollars in debt, and we're adding another $1 trillion to the debt about every 100 days. Interest on the national debt is now over $1 trillion by the end of the next calendar year. That's about 15% more than the entire defense budget. Folks, this ain't sustainable. And electing Donald Trump is it even going to put the brakes on it? I don't know. That remains to be seen. But I think there's enough people in both parties who don't want to change the status quo. They don't want to stop the debt and the deficit. They just want to blame it on the other party. But anyway, on that note, I've rambled on long enough. I haven't done a video in a while, so forgive me if I got long winded. It's just been kind of a crazy year, but we're off to 2025. I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't I don't expect um, big positive changes, and I'm hoping I'm wrong. I hope that Donald Trump can make good on his promises, and that Congress can get their heads out of their butts and get things going at least in the right direction. But it seems like right now we should be happier about somebody stopping the bleeding. Stop the bleeding and mitigate the damage a little bit. It's just really hard to fix things that are almost systemic. Um, I feel I fear that if we don't soon get a handle on things, that we're going to face austerity measures that are not going to be very pleasant. Doesn't matter if you're a Republican, a Democrat, a libertarian, or a vegetarian. Austerity measures, when the faith and credit of our government is basically paid for with a promise of more debt. Eventually, your creditors don't want to hear that, or the interest rates go way, way up. And, it becomes like junk bonds. Um, that happens, and we get forced into enough austerity measures, these states, you're going to have a convention of states under Article 5. And I don't mean a constitutional convention. That's not what I meant. I meant an Article 5 convention of states. It takes 34 to call and 38 to ratify. And one of the first things could be a balanced budget amendment. The second one would be legislative term limits. Um, Once these things start happening and people face severe austerity measures, especially because of the spending of politicians in other states, they're gonna get up to their state legislatures and they're gonna be like, "Hey, we got to stop this. It's hurting too much." So the founding fathers were smart enough to include three ways to amend the Constitution. One was a normal constitutional amendment, two-thirds of the House, two-thirds of the Senate, three-quarters of the states. Um, that's typically how it's handled. The second way is the Article 5 Convention of States, which is where these states get together and they have a nominating convention and they basically put forth a limited amendment. It can only be one thing. So it can be for term limits, balanced budget. Um, you could say, well, we're going to change the electoral college, or um, we're going to eliminate the 16th Amendment and eliminate the income tax, and just go back implement a consumption tax. That can be done by the states without the approval of the president, without a single member of Congress. That would be the states reclaiming their sovereignty. Um, it would take 34 to call and 38 to ratify. The third way, which is like hitting a reset button for the whole country, is a constitutional convention, which is basically to rewrite the entire Constitution. Now, you do that, the country's over. We'd be in a civil war pretty quickly if that happened. Because think of who you would have on that in charge of rewriting the Constitution. You would have people like Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, AOC. Um, you would have Marjorie Taylor Greene, Lauren Boebert. Okay, you would have Tim Kaine, Mark Warner, um, Elizabeth Warren, um, Ed Markey, or as they say up there, Ed Mackey. You would have people similar in caliber to the late Dianne Feinstein, um, the late Jesse Helms. Um, you would have people like Joe Biden when he was in the Senate. You would have people like that involved in rewriting the Constitution. So, do you really want people who don't really understand civics, economics, or history involved? Imagine what kind of bastardization they would come up with if they wrote the Constitution from scratch today. What kind of country? What would be considered rights, and what would be just privileges? And do you think they would move more towards liberty or more towards centralization of more power? It's a pretty scary thing to think about. But our founders were definitely wise beyond their years. They made the amendment process deliberately difficult, but not impossible. It has been done 27 times, 17 of which were after the original Bill of Rights. So, this, are we going to get another amendment? Are we going to have a convention of states? I don't know. Is it going to happen in my lifetime? I don't know. Don't know how long I'm going to live, obviously, but I'm on the verge of turning 60 now. Um, but I want this country to be safer, more prosperous, and more free for my grandchildren. Well, my grandson. I know I'm going to have more grandchildren eventually, but you know that makes me have skin in the game. I care about the future of our nation, and I want it to be. I'm not naive enough to think that it's going to be the same place in which I grew up, but I want it to be just as good or better for my descendants. And with a lot of the people in DC, that's not going to happen. But maybe people will begin to see the light and realize, hey, we have all the tools, we have all the blessings that any country in the world has in the United States to be a lot more prosperous than we are now. Are things pretty good here? Yeah. People are dying by the millions. Well, millions of people are risking their lives in order to come here. Do certain things suck at times? Yeah. Do we have a lot of issues? Certainly. But I've been in 35 different countries on 3 different continents now. One of them being Finland last June. Oh, Helsinki it was a little chilly even in June, but it was a beautiful place. Um, you know, I picked up a little something from everywhere I've been, and most everywhere I've been, the people have been very nice. I didn't think a lot of Europeans would really like Americans that much, but many of them do. I've had some people say, "Well, we like Americans, we just don't like your government." I'm like, fair enough. A lot of us feel that way too. But there are some things that something that might work in Finland is not going to work in Minnesota, or something that works in Germany isn't going to work in California or Texas. So many people want to compare the United States directly, and you can't really do that. Our Constitution is very different. Rather than being a social democracy, we are a constitutional republic. It's kind of a difference there. Um, but I think that I'm cautiously optimistic, and if you are or you're not, if you had the attention span to listen to my entire rant, which wasn't really that much of a rant, but drop a comment, let me know. I mean, maybe you think I'm wrong. That's okay. I'm just one man, just an unassuming old boy out here living in Virginia. So, take one day at a time. And as the late Casey Kasem used to say, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. Happy New Year to everybody.